President Vladimir Putin announced Tuesday that Russia will pull back from a key nuclear treaty, ratcheting up tensions with the United States as President Joe Biden visited the region with a fresh pledge of support for Ukraine. Putin's speech came on the heels of a surprise and historic visit by Biden to Kyiv. Biden was scheduled to deliver an address from Poland on his view of Russia's war in Ukraine as the conflict approaches the one-year mark. In his nearly two-hour speech to both houses of the Russian parliament, Putin said he was suspending Moscow's participation in New START, a strategic nuclear arms reduction treaty between the US and Russia. Putin said this action was being taken because of the US and NATO, without specifying more. In this regard, I am forced to announce today that Russia is suspending its participation in the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty, he said. Americans stand with you. Joe Biden walks streets of Kyiv in surprise visit. New START is the last remaining nuclear arms reduction deal between the US and Russia. It was signed in 2010 and extended for 5 years in 2021. It limits each side to 1,550 long-range nuclear warheads. Over the last few years, Russia has violated and walked away from key arms control agreements. With today's decision on New START, the whole arms control architecture has been dismantled, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken described Putin's move as deeply unfortunate and irresponsible. We'll be watching carefully to see what Russia actually does. As he has done many times before, Putin blamed the West for provoking the war, accusing the US and its European allies of wanting to acquire limitless power. He said Ukraine's allies were playing a dirty game, that NATO members were openly talking about supplying Ukraine with nuclear weapons, they aren't, and that the entire planet was dotted with US military bases. Putin claimed that Western economic sanctions on Russia were not working, that Russian farmers just had a record grain harvest, Russia has stolen Ukraine's grain over the last year, and that he plans to bolster Russia's diplomatic and economic ties to India, Iran and other countries in the Middle East. Large parts of his speech were focused on domestic policies connected to infrastructure spending and financial reforms. He praised Russian soldiers and said he would systematically continue with the Ukraine invasion he ordered a year ago. He did not unveil any new military objectives connected to Ukraine. Putin ruled out Russia making a first nuclear strike in Ukraine, and said that Russia would only conduct nuclear tests if the US did so first. Biden delivered his speech in Warsaw a day after he made an unplanned visit to Ukraine, where he met with President Volodymyr Zelensky and reiterated American commitment to supplying the country with aid and weapons for the long term. Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia, never, Biden said in Warsaw.